Welcome to the debate. What if the most powerful magical family in history didn't actually get their strength from ancient spell books or pure blood lineage?
Right, or like some hidden artifact.
Exactly. What if it came from the crushing weight of their own psychological trauma? Today, we are opening the Collins family records, a wizarding lineage that's just marked by extraordinary magical capability and, well, profound historical tragedy.
It's a heavy archive to get through, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And as we look at the very foundation of their power, we have to ask, what is the actual mechanism driving this legacy? Like, how do they pull off these extraordinary magical feats?
Right, what's the engine?
Exactly. And I argue that the Collins legacy is really defined by this heavy burden of solitary guardianship. Their magic is fueled by their willingness to sacrifice their own personal peace to protect others. It's just the raw, unyielding weight of duty.
But what if that power actually comes from their radical refusal to let that duty break them?
How so?
I mean, you look at this family and you see this stoic, unyielding stone wall, right? But any magical architect will tell you that a wall without flex just shatters under pressure. The true catalyst for the Collins family's power, the actual engine of their magic, isn't stoic duty at all.
You don't think so?
No, not at all. It's emotional rebellion. It's this extreme, unapologetic vulnerability and their continuous defiance of traditional, rigid wizarding conventions.
Okay, well, let's test that theory by looking at the matriarch who started it all, Erin Rose Collins.
Right. The focal point.
Yeah.
Born Erin Rose Miller, 1875, in a Nomash family in Salem. By the time she arrives at Hogwarts at age 15, her carriage is literally being attacked by a dragon.
Yeah, talk about a rough first day.
Exactly. From day one, her initiation into magic is just defined by peril, and she is immediately thrust into this hidden war against the goblin Ranrock and the dark wizard Victor Rookwood.
Right, and in the middle of all that chaos, she loses her mentor, Professor Eleazar Fig.
Yeah, she's essentially a child soldier navigating forces she barely even understands at that point.
That's a perfect way to put it. And how does she respond to that immense trauma? With the ultimate expression of unnatural duty. She secures a dangerously corrupted reservoir of ancient magic.
Mm-hmm.
And when she dies of natural causes at age 50, she refuses to pass on. She anchors her soul to Hogwarts as a ghostly shade to serve as the eternal secret keeper of that magic.
Right.
I mean, she gives up her eternal rest for the sake of security. That is the fundamental mechanism of this family's power, the willingness to endure complete isolation to keep the world safe.
See, you look at a ghost staying behind for centuries and you see submission to duty. I look at it and see profound systemic defiance.
Defiance? She literally trapped herself.
Let's unpack the actual mechanics of what Erin did, though. You're framing her as this dutiful lighthouse keeper working for the betterment of the wizarding system. But who is she guarding that magic from?
From anyone who would misuse it, from dark wizards, from, another goblin rebellion.
And from the wizarding establishment itself. I mean, think about the keepers she interacted with. Percival Rackham, Charles Rookwood, Nia Fitzgerald.
Okay, sure, they had their flaws.
They had massive flaws. She saw firsthand how secretive and ultimately destructive the traditional guardians of ancient magic were. By anchoring herself as a shade, she is explicitly bypassing all those traditional authorities.
I mean,
she didn't hand the secret to the Ministry of Magic. She didn't entrust it to the Hogwarts headmaster. The records explicitly state she stayed to bide her time to guide any soul who possessed her rare gift.
Right, her future lineage.
Exactly. That is a total rejection of institutional control. She trusted herself and her future lineage way more than the establishment.
But taking ownership of a burden because you believe you are the absolute only one capable of handling it, that isn't rebellion. That's a solitary mandate.
I disagree.
Well, autonomy and duty are not mutually exclusive here. In fact, her autonomy forces her into an even stricter duty. She binds herself to the physical location of Hogwarts.
Geographically, sure.
Right, and if we talk about the actual physics of ghostly manifestation, it requires an anchor, usually trauma, regret, or an unfinished task. Erin turns her own sense of obligation into a metaphysical chain. She basically weaponizes her own isolation.
Well, she weaponizes her judgment, not her isolation. The magic she is guarding was corrupted by pain and anger, right?
Yes, deeply corrupted.
And the previous keepers tried to handle it by locking it away in this, emotional vacuum, which only made it more volatile. Erin understood that the traditional pureblood approach to magic, hoarding it, suppressing the emotional toll of it, was the real danger.
Okay.
Her choice to wait for a successor who actually understood the emotional weight of the magic is an act of rebellious hope. It's not a life sentence of stoicism.
Okay, well, let's follow that thread of emotional weight then, because it brings us directly to Katherine Collins in the modern era.
Let's do it.
If you want to argue that emotional rebellion is the engine of their magic, how do you explain Katherine's life after her husband Anthony dies? Anthony was a ministry cursebreaker. He dies prematurely, and what does Katherine do?
She becomes a healer at St. Mungo's and raises their daughter, Agatha, in Godric's Hollow.
Right. But look at how she lives. The records describe her as feeling numb and becoming increasingly serious and reserved by age 30.
Well, she was grieving.
She retreats completely into her work as a healer and her role as a mother. She is living in a solitary state, burdened every single day by the guilt of failing to heal the man she loved.
Right, but
She's an exceedingly proficient spellcaster, a potion maker, a brilliant Ravenclaw, and she couldn't save her own husband. Her magic is now entirely driven by penance. Doesn't this prove that the family's default operational mode is solitary suffering?
a lot of people looking at the records might see Katherine moving to Godric's Hollow, throwing herself into her work at St. Mungo's, and assume she's just retreating into this cold, dutiful shell.
Because she is.
But you are ignoring the psychological engine of why she functions that way. We need to look at the catalyst of her power, which goes all the way back to her childhood in that London manor.
You mean her pureblood parents, Eleanor and Edward Taylor?
Exactly. Eleanor and Edward demanded absolute aristocratic perfection. They were the very embodiment of rigid, emotionless wizarding standards.
Which was common for purebloods at the time.
Right. And when Katherine first showed magic at age 7, making a book fly down from a high shelf, her mother didn't celebrate. Eleanor just said, it could have been more remarkable.
Ouch. Yeah.
Katherine was forced to suppress her true self. Her entire magical foundation was built on emotional suffocation.
Which makes her later retreat into numbness entirely consistent with her baseline. She just reverted to form.
No, because you're completely skipping over Anthony. Anthony was a free-spirited Gryffindor. He was the catalyst here. He helped her tear down those emotional walls.
Sure, he helped her open up.
Katherine's true magical self-actualization only happened because she allowed herself to be vulnerable with him. So when Anthony dies, yes, she is devastated. But she doesn't revert to her mother's coldness.
I mean, she becomes serious and reserved.
But look at the letter she writes to Anthony long after his death. She says, I need to be strong for her, to be the rock you always were for me.
A rock, literally using the metaphor of unyielding stone. You're making my point for me.
A rock of support, not a rock of isolation. She writes about the way Anthony made tea, about feeling his hand on her shoulder. She is striving every single day to be the warm, affectionate mother that Eleanor never was.
Okay, but
If she were operating purely out of guilt and duty, she would close herself off from Agatha to protect her. Instead, she consciously chooses love over detachment. She keeps that profound emotional connection alive to fuel her daily existence. That is not numbness. That is active, agonizing emotional presence.
I mean, I hear what you're saying about her emotional depth, but you are severely downplaying the actual mechanics of healing magic here.
How so?
Healing at the level required at St. Mungo's, dealing with curse damage, magical maladies, irreversible hexes, requires immense compartmentalization. You literally cannot be bleeding emotionally over every patient.
Well, no, of course not.
The reason Katherine is so effective is because she channels her unresolved guilt over Anthony into this rigorous, punishing schedule of saving others. The responsibility she feels to heal completely eclipses her emotional freedom.
I wouldn't say it eclipses it.
She is trapped by the duty of her own talents, just like Erin was trapped by her ability to see ancient magic. The love might have been the initial spark, I'll give you that. But the heavy machinery of her life right now is built entirely out of obligation.
But the obligation is an expression of the love. You cannot separate the two mechanically. The only reason her healing magic has such potency is because she actually understands the catastrophic cost of loss.
Right, she's lived it.
Exactly. She feels guilt precisely because she allowed herself to be utterly vulnerable. If she'd remained the guarded, suppressed, pure-blood daughter that Eleanor Taylor wanted, she wouldn't feel this devastating loss, and her magic would lack that profound empathy. The tragedy of the Collins family isn't that they are bound by duty, it's that they love fiercely in a world that is incredibly dangerous.
Well, if loving fiercely in a dangerous world is the baseline, then we have to look at what they are passing down to the next generation. Because Katherine's worldview directly shapes her daughter Agatha.
Right.
And Agatha is really the crux of this entire debate. She is the thrice great-granddaughter, and she has inherited Erin's rare ancient magic.
And she is the ultimate proof that vulnerability, not rigidity, is the key to this power.
Let me push back on that immediately, because the environment Agatha is being raised in just screams heavy duty. I mean, look at the geography. Godric's Hollow.
It's a historic village.
It isn't just a quiet village, though. It is physically and historically marked by the ultimate magical sacrifice, the Potter family. The war memorial in the center of the village literally transforms into a statue of James, Lily, and Harry Potter, to those who can see it.
Yeah, it's a powerful monument.
The graveyard is filled with the oldest, heaviest lineages in wizarding history. For Katherine to raise the heir to ancient magic in a place echoing with such immense personal tragedy and historical duty, it's deeply symbolic. Agatha is walking into a predefined role of solitary guardianship. It's inescapable.
See, you're looking at the geography, but you aren't looking at the physics of the girl herself. Let's look at Agatha's specific character traits.
Okay.
She is 18 years old. She is a Hufflepuff. She is shy, deeply sensitive, and prone to isolating herself when she feels insecure.
Which sounds exactly like someone buckling under the weight of an immense solitary burden. If she isolates herself when she feels insecure, how on earth is she supposed to handle a corrupted reservoir of magic that literally fueled a goblin rebellion?
By using empathy as a pressure valve. This is where we have to look at the mechanics of ancient magic. Why did the ancient magic corrupt in the first place back in Erin's time?
Well, because a wizard named Isudora Morganach tried to extract emotional pain from people, and she stored that extracted pain in massive repositories underground, and it mutated into something violent and volatile.
Exactly. Isidora tried to remove pain. She treated human emotion as an inconvenience that needed to be, surgically excised and bottled up.
Right.
The traditional pure-blood wizarding approach, the approach of the keepers, was to lock it away in a sealed vault. They built a pressure cooker of suppressed trauma, and eventually, Ranrock found it, and it exploded into a war.
And Erin stepped in to contain the explosion.
Right, but Erin could only hold the line. She was dealing with wartime triage. Now we have Agatha. Agatha wasn't raised to suppress her emotions.
No, she wasn't.
She wasn't raised with Eleanor Taylor's coldness or Erin's wartime trauma. She writes to her mother, "You're my rock. I want to be just like you when I grow up." She tells her mother that her deceased father is tucked away in our hearts. She doesn't compartmentalize her grief. She feels it.
I mean, I'm struggling to see how crying over a diary or being deeply sensitive makes you capable of stabilizing a force of magic that can obliterate mountains.
Because ancient magic responds directly to the emotional state of the user. If you approach it with a desire for control, or if you try to rigidly suppress it, it fights back. It becomes volatile.
So you're saying her sensitivity is a tool?
Agatha's Hufflepuff empathy acts as a magical grounding wire. She understands what it means to feel lonely. She understands grief, having lost her father days before she turned 10. But she also understands unconditional, vocalized love.
Okay.
That emotional vulnerability is the mechanism. She doesn't have to build a stone wall to contain the magic. She can safely vent it, process it, and flow with it. Her sensitivity isn't a weakness to be overcome. It's the exact magical tool required to interact with forces that could mend or mar the world.
It is an incredibly elegant mechanical explanation, I'll grant you that. The pressure valve metaphor makes sense on a theoretical level, but let's look at the reality of Agatha's situation.
Okay.
She writes about wanting to be just like her mother. Her mother is a woman who spends her nights awake, agonizing over patients she couldn't save, punishing herself with the memory of a dead husband. If Agatha is modeling herself after Katherine, she is modeling herself after a martyr.
I wouldn't call her a martyr.
Well, empathy might be a grounding wire, but when you are grounded to the suffering of the entire wizarding world, it fries the circuit.
Not if the circuit is built on mutual support. You keep ignoring the fact that Agatha and Katherine rely on each other. It's not solitary.
But the very existence of their letters, the fact that they write to each other about their fears and their longings, breaks the cycle of isolation. Erin stood alone in the dark under Hogwarts. Katherine and Agatha are sitting together in Godric's Hollow, actively talking about their pain. That shared vulnerability diffuses the burden. But does it diffuse the burden or just expand the number of people carrying it? The magic still demands a guardian. The corrupted reservoir is still there, waiting for Agatha.
Yes, it is.
You can talk about your feelings all you want, but when a dark wizard or a rogue goblin faction comes looking for that power, empathy isn't going to cast the protective wards. Duty is.
I don't know.
The willingness to stand between the danger and the innocent is what saves lives. Erin knew that. Katherine knows that when she walks into the curse ward at St. Mungo's every morning.
But why do they stand between the danger and the innocent? It's not because a rule book told them to. It's because Katherine remembers what Anthony's hand felt like on her shoulder.
Right.
It's because Agatha knows what it feels like to be loved unconditionally. If you only have duty, you eventually become Isadora Morgan Natch, extracting pain because you think you know what's best for the world, completely detached from the humanity of it. The Collins family avoids that corruption specifically because they refuse to detach. Their power is fueled by the very emotions they are trying to protect in others.
So we arrive at a fascinating intersection with Agatha. We have this 18-year-old girl stepping into a monumental inheritance. On one hand, she carries the undeniable geographic and historical weight of her lineage, the legacy of her thrice great-grandmother waiting in the shadows of Hogwarts. Demands a guardian.
It really does.
It demands someone who will not flinch when the safety of the wizarding world is on the line. The heavy machinery of responsibility is already in motion.
And on the other hand, she possesses a psychological toolkit that none of her predecessors had. She has the emotional sensitivity, the Hufflepuff empathy, and a foundation of maternal love that doesn't demand perfection.
Yeah, it's completely different from Eleanor Taylor.
Exactly. She has the potential to handle this ancient magic, not as a warden guarding a radioactive core, but as someone who can actually heal the corruption within it. She might finally be the one to dismantle the stone wall completely.
It is a remarkable case study in magical inheritance. I mean, the Collins family records offer us profound insights into how trauma, duty, and love physically alter the way magic manifests across generations. There's so much more depth in the primary source material, and I highly suggest our listeners dig into the archives, especially Katherine and Agatha's letters, to see the nuance of this relationship for themselves.
Absolutely. Because when you read those brief words of longing and comfort, you see the actual mechanics of their survival. You see how a family processes historical grief in real time.
There is always more to uncover when we examine the foundations of magical power. Whether you see an unyielding stone anchor built to weather the worst of storms, or a structure designed to bend, sway, and vent the emotional currents, the sheer weight and impact of the Collins legacy remains undeniable.